Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Performance Cafe. I'm really glad to have you here. And if you don't know me, my name is Innocent Berger, and I am your host at the Performance Cafe, where we're taking a look at making the lives of employees better one company at a time. So today we're talking about conflict. And the concept is, what is conflict? And I think it seems easy enough. I mean, we all know when we're in conflict, don't we? I'm not so sure. So let's take a look at the different phases and different things that happen during conflict. And then we decide from there where we are at with conflict. So let's start off with the definition of conflict. So conflict is seen as a serious disagreement or an argument, typically a protracted one, between certain parties. More than one party, we can have inner conflict, we can have interpersonal conflict. So we even have that. Today we're going to be taking a look at conflict, but not the road rage type. We're going to take a look at protracted conflict between individuals. Now, when we talk about conflict, we all feel like we have one way of seeing it. But actually, conflict has a couple of phases of emotions that it goes through before we get to real conflict. And we have to see what that is for us. So I'd like you to imagine a line that goes from left to right on your side. On your left side, it says annoyed. And on your right side, it says enraged. So how did we get from one to the other? Well, let's first take a look what this means. Annoyed is, that did not go as planned. How do we fix it? Right? It's a little bit of an itch, but we'll get over it. Next up on our line, so close to annoyed, nowhere near enraged, is frustrated. Frustrated is like, oh dear, I was hoping that wouldn't happen again, but let's fix it. Now we're getting to the middle of the line. And at the middle of the line, we've got aggravated. And aggravated is that point where we start seeing some serious friction and emotion coming in, where people feel like the message they're sending is not being received, and that maybe we need to escalate what's going on around here. So meetings will be called and discussions will be held. At this point in time, it's really important to understand that anything that happens once aggravated or worse is very emotionally charged. And so that sometimes can shoot ourselves, we can shoot ourselves in the foot with it, just because we're sort of setting ourselves up for failure because the emotions are taking control instead of logic. So what we see when we get from annoyed, frustrated to aggravated is also that the issue is often a content issue. It's something that someone does not understand. It is something that happens quite naturally through a learning curve. We expect someone who's new to, have certain difficulties, to have certain things that they don't understand, that they don't grasp immediately, or that, they understand the process, but where they come from, maybe a different company or a different industry, it would have been done slightly different. No one's really trying to do anything wrong. It's just all part of the learning process. However, once we start getting to aggravated, we're seeing that learning process has been reiterated. The training's been done, the onboarding's been done. And now there's really just a sense of, I need someone to comply. I need them to do this. I've explained the content, that they should get this now. Next up, now remember, we are now in the emotional space. We get exasperated, and the person sort of feels like this issue is constantly repeating itself. And despite all the measures I've put into place, it still happens the moment I don't pay attention. So now we have emotion, but we also have time sensitivity because someone is being locked into the management of this thing. And what they're managing, they feel either does not need management or they feel other people should be able to cope on their own. Now you can see that the person is starting to feel personally impacted by what's going on. It's not a content situation anymore. And then lastly, we have enraged. Enraged is on the extreme opposite side, on your right-hand side. And it says, despite trying to put in safeguards and personally managing situations, the error or whatever's happening keeps on repeating itself. And very often the person is at this point where we speak about tearing their hair out. Why is no one listening to me? And what happens at this point is that we go to that place of futility where no matter what I do, I'm not getting this fixed. No matter what happens, I'm not sorting it out. Why am I even wasting my time with this? There's much better places for me to put my effort into and actually get a better return on investment. So we see with aggravated, exasperated, and enraged, we're coming to the point where it's a relationship issue. This person should have the content by now. They just don't care enough about me to do what I ask, right? So previously, before aggravated, we're still seeing support for the person, trying to fix it, giving the training, hand-holding, whatever the case may be. But at this point, when we are looking at exasperated and specifically enraged, the person feels that they're not being heard. Their effort is not being rewarded. So they're going to withdraw. And this is where penalties come in. And very often I've seen, and those of you who have watched Performance Cafe before and other videos, know that we've done a lot of work on accountability. And what I find is that there's a jump from annoyed to exasperated and enraged. It's like we don't cover the other two. We don't do the developing, the hand-holding necessarily. And so what happens is we go straight into penalty. And when we do that, we're not really sure whether the person really understands what is needed of them. Let's take a look at a case study and how this continuum of emotions that we talk about plays out in a conflict situation. So let's imagine there's a manager who has to put up with some interpersonal friction between two team members. Initially, it's just an annoyance, right? It's irritating, but potentially it's considered not really harmful. And, they'll get over it when this project is done, when the timeline is done, whatever's causing pressure that's bringing this bickering on. However, if the bickering doesn't pass, then this becomes a frustration for the manager because the constant bickering is now becoming so public and so visible, and it's starting to have an impact on the team as well. So the manager goes and sits each of them down, has a discussion with them, and tries to explain to them the impact that this is having on the team members, on their personal brands, all of those things. If this doesn't work, then the manager is going to get aggravated because despite trying to solve this problem, there's nothing happening. And this manager is being put in a position where the manager has to spend time dealing with this instead of getting to other important work. So at this point, the manager might bring them together and discuss with them the situation and the impact that it's having. Also, he might mention, or she might mention, that penalties will be put in place if this doesn't stop, because it is at the point where this is affecting the entire team. Now, one would think that having a sit down with the manager might solve the problem, but if it doesn't, then the manager will feel exasperation because the problem is persisting. It's impacting the productivity, not only of the individuals, but now of the entire team. And therefore, we get into the point where a disciplinary process is being considered. So the penalties are becoming less informal and are being formalized towards a disciplinary process. In the end, if the individuals don't give up, then the manager will feel enraged, and they will feel that because they're being forced into the situation, but they have to deal with this ongoing negativity that for some other reason cannot be resolved between these two people. At this point in time, we find that people, because of the futility, will retreat, and therefore it's very easy for the talk to start coming around termination of employment, because at that point in time, no one feels that it's worthwhile to save this anymore. So I think there's an important thing that we need to hear and understand about conflict in the situation, and specifically the role of the manager, is often we feel like the manager is more powerful. The manager gets the big bucks. the manager is the person that is in total control. But actually, any form of conflict is very negative for most of us. You see, angry people aren't angry. At the root of anger is actually confusion, sadness, or fear. And in business, this is made, it's sort of highlighted. It's really like magnified, actually, is the word. Because what happens is in conflict, when we talk about resolving conflict, what we need is time and we need emotional clarity. And in none of these situations do we often have that. Because in business, we're always pushed, we're always busy, we're always doing just whatever's needed to get this sorted and move on to the next thing. And so this chasing after time and the chasing after results gets in the way of us being able to deal with this kind of conflict. So this is what makes it so difficult, because the person who has to put up with this conflict, the person who's trying to resolve the issue, well, they don't know what to do. Remember we said confusion? But the business does not allow them to stop. They are forced to keep on going. And in business, very often, getting to the formalized form or part of dealing with this, this relationship or this conflict is often given as the ultimate way to get out of this. When we talk of sadness, it sounds like innocent people are not sad when they're dealing with conflict in business. They are. Because you see, sadness, if you think, what's sadness really about? It's about loss. It's about the loss of a team member. It's about the loss of the potential of people. It's about the loss that a division, a department is going to have. It's about the loss of connection with people that we work with, that we spend so much time with. Makes it more difficult to have emotionally neutral conversations. And then afraid? Well, afraid of what's going to happen. What are the consequences? If I can't manage my team members, what's going to happen to me? You know, we can be sad and fearful. We can be sad for someone who might lose their job, or sad for someone who's going to lose their esteem or their connection. We're afraid for ourselves. Will I be seen as a bad manager? Will I not get a team to manage again? Will my team be taken away from me? What's the consequence on me? And if that's the consequence on me, what's the consequence on my family? Increased stress, lack of money. You'd be amazed how deeply this cuts. And in business, we face this all the time. So I think when we talk about what conflict is, before we even go down the rabbit hole of what to do, we've got to ask ourselves, which of those emotions stand out for me? At what point do I feel that there is now conflict? At what point do I feel like emotionally things are getting out of control? Can I be quite resilient and it goes quite far before I get there? Or am I quick to anger? In which case, instead of going through all of those phases, I'm speeding up the process. And what does that mean for me? And what does that mean how I handle conflict? And then, if you've never thought of it before, how does confusion, sadness, or fear push me to take the next steps? I'd like to close off with a quote by Max Lucado, who said, conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. And I think if we understand how we deal with conflict, we can stay away from combat as far as possible. Get there as late as possible so we can really resolve the issue at hand. If you've enjoyed this video and you're looking for more, we record these and upload them on YouTube and Facebook. And related articles can be found on my website, performforward.com. And of course, on LinkedIn, we will post the videos and articles there. And if you've got any questions or suggestions for topics, or if you disagree with me, let me know. I'd love to hear other opinions. But please do leave those comments on your platform of choice, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But until next Wednesday, here's my coffee. I'll see you at the Performance Cafe.